What does Stalin mean for our country and the world today? In this film, we will deliberately avoid discussing Stalin's personal life. We will not talk about his principles or strong-willed qualities. It's not about his abilities, his phenomenal memory, his reading ability, or his great desire for self-education. All this will remain outside the brackets. The film has a different task. We want to recall the era in which Stalin lived, the ideas he served, the main milestones of his political path, and behind them to see the dry residue of his deeds. Joseph Jugashvili was born in the last quarter of the 19th century. The time of great changes has come in the Russian Empire. More recently, serfdom was abolished, the old way of life was breaking down, the hard work of workers in factories and mill mills, the heavy burden of paying taxes, the disenfranchisement and need of the common worker, and the growth of social tension. These were the realities of Tsarist Russia. The situation in the country was heating up. When young Soso, the son of a shoemaker and a worker, began studying in the seminary, underground Marxist organizations were already active in Russia. 15-year-old seminarian Jugashvili gets into one of these circles and gets carried away by revolutionary ideas. Karl Marx discovered and formulated the laws of historical development of society. He was the first to scientifically prove that everything that happens in society depends on the method of production, distribution, and exchange of material goods. It is economic relations that determine all aspects of human life: politics, law, the state and its institutions, culture, ideology, religion, art, worldview, and morality. The emergence of private property gradually led to the division of society into large groups of people, classes. A specific class structure corresponds to each production method. Some classes produce benefits, while others appropriate most of what they produce. The tools of labor become more complex, the person himself changes, and as the productive forces of society develop, contradictions arise between classes. Over time, the contradictions become more and more acute. As a result, the old production method is replaced by the new one. At the same time, the ruling classes lose their importance and withdraw from the historical arena. New classes are taking their place. The change of socio-economic formations is natural. The slave-owning system exhausted the resource of its development and was replaced by a more progressive system, feudalism. Feudalism has fallen under the blows of capitalism. In the current historical era, the revolutionary class has become the proletariat, the class of wage earners. The main driving force of historical process in our days is the class struggle between the proletariat and the bourgeoisie. The victory of the proletariat in this struggle is inevitable. It is predetermined by the contradictions of capitalism. The path to it lies through the socialist revolution. Only by taking power into their own hands, by destroying private ownership of the means of production, will the workers be able to put an end to exploitation, first to build a socialist and then a classless communist society. Marx did not just provide a scientific explanation of social phenomena. For the first time in history, the oppressed class received a clear and understandable political recipe for getting rid of oppression. The year is 1998. Joseph Jugashvili joins the Tiflis branch of the RSDLP. He is engaged in propaganda and party journalism, creates printing houses, organizes demonstrations, strikes, and stakeouts, forms combat squads and party committees, gets money for the needs of the party, gets weapons, participates in the elimination of provocateurs, organizes expropriations. By the time he met Lenin in 1905, he was an experienced and seasoned revolutionary. The clarity and definiteness of Stalin's political views can be traced already in his early works and articles. The time has passed when they boldly proclaimed united and indivisible Russia. Now, even a child knows that a united and indivisible Russia does not exist, that it has long since been divided into two opposing classes, the bourgeoisie and the proletariat.
Now, it is no secret to anyone that the struggle between these two classes has become the axis around which our modern life revolves. The wealthy bourgeoisie is our implacable enemy. Her wealth is based on our poverty. Her joy is based on our sorrow.
The First Russian Revolution is being defeated. During the years of reaction, Stalin together with Lenin waged a struggle against the Mensheviks, liquidators, and Otzavists, who were destroying the party of the working class from within. Lenin appreciates Stalin's organizational skills. At his suggestion in 1912, Stalin was elected in absentia to the Central Committee of the party and placed at the head of the Central Committee's Russian Bureau. He directs practical party work in Russia, edits the newspapers Zvezda and Pravda, and constantly writes articles for them. He has been arrested 8 8 times, exiled 7 times, and escaped 6 times. April 1917. The monarchy has fallen. Lenin returns from exile. Stalin supports Lenin's policy of armed insurrection, is engaged in its organization and preparation. A revolution cannot satisfy everyone and everything. It always satisfies the working masses with one end and strikes the secret and obvious enemies of these masses with the other. Therefore, it is necessary to choose, either together with the workers and the peasant poor for the revolution, or together with the capitalists and landowners against the revolution. The power of the bourgeoisie has been overthrown. Stalin was a member of the first Soviet government, the Council of People's Commissars. During the Civil War, he led the fighting of the Red Army in the most dangerous and difficult areas. The year is 1922. At Lenin's suggestion, Stalin was elected General Secretary of the party. After Lenin's death, all the initiatives of the first years of Soviet power were continued. The GOELRO plan was being implemented. Industrial production was recovering and growing. The science of the Soviet country was strengthening. Illiteracy was being eliminated at an accelerated pace. During his visit to the USSR, the Indian writer Rabindranath Tagore described the atmosphere of the young Soviet state in this way. It is surprising to see the amazing energy with which Russia is striving to spread education throughout the country, and the point here is not only in the number of people, but also in depth, in scope. And among the semi-civilized peoples of Central Asia, they spread education with the rapidity of a flood, and there is no limit to their tireless energy aimed at giving these people access to the heights of science. There are huge crowds in theaters, and the main audience are peasants and workers, and they are not insulted anywhere. In 2 or 3 institutions that I have visited so far, I have noticed a spiritual rebirth and the triumph of awakened human dignity. The common people have thrown off the burden of inequality, were able to straighten up and raise their heads. They are now standing in the world of people with their heads held high. Their minds are independent, but their hands are free. Back in the 1920s, the party set a course for industrialization and complete collectivization. Both of these tasks were related. The solution of one was impossible without the solution of the other. New construction sites, factories, and fill mills needed millions of workers. Small peasant farms not equipped with modern technology could not feed a huge country with a growing urban population. And without a developed industry, the state would not have been able to ensure its defensive capability. The peace after the first imperialist massacre was only a respite. The outbreak of a new war was only a matter of time, and the Bolsheviks understood this perfectly. We are 50 to 100 years behind the advanced countries. We have to run this distance in 10 years. Either we do it or we will be crushed. These words were spoken by Stalin in 1931. Hydroelectric plants, thousands of factories, tens of thousands of collective farms and state farms with machine tractor services serving them. All this appeared in the USSR in 2 5-year plans. French journalist and public figure Henri Barbusse wrote, and here are the facts. The poorest of the European states, ignorant, shackled, beaten, hungry, and destroyed, became the largest industrial country in Europe and the second in the world, and moreover, the most cultured in all respects. Such unprecedented growth has been achieved by the resources of the country alone. Everyone else was its enemy. The obstacles in those years were caused by not only externals, but not by others. Betrayers, traitors, and wreckers abounded inside the country. Collectivization was essentially the end of the socialist revolution in rural areas. It is now that people like to portray the kulaks as exceptionally good, strong masters who suffered for nothing from the Soviet government. But the reality was that in the 20s and 30s, the kulaks actively opposed the work of collective farms. They often staged terrorist attacks and arsons, killed collective farm activists, police officers, and Red Army soldiers. But the inertia of the past and the search for class enemies were overcome.
Yes, mistakes were made on the ground. It is difficult to implement such a large-scale project without a single mistake. But without industry and mechanized agriculture, the Soviet Union certainly had no future. The USSR became the first country in world history to build socialism. This was achieved not only due to the enormous enthusiasm of the Soviet people. The standard of living of the workers steadily increased. achieved. In the Stalinist USSR, someone who worked well for the benefit of society and lived well. The 1936 Constitution finally legitimized the October Conquest and the basic foundations of socialism. It did not just declare social rights that the working people could not even dream of before. These rights were guaranteed to the citizens of the USSR in practice. Neither the landowner, nor the manufacturer, nor the czar were now the masters of the country. A worker, a collective farmer, a doctor, an engineer, and a teacher. And when the enemy came to Soviet soil, he faced incredible resistance from its new owners. Human history has never known such courage, heroism, perseverance, sacrifice, and dedication at the front and in the rear. The Soviet army won, the Soviet weapons won, the Soviet technology won, the Soviet industry won, the Soviet collective farm won, the Soviet science and the Soviet school won. The spirit of the free Soviet man, the worker and the warrior won. The Communist Party won. Soviet diplomacy and Soviet government won. The Supreme Commander's headquarters won. The socialist system has won and proved its complete superiority. That war was a class war, a war of socialism and capitalism. The world capitalist powers, Britain, France, and the United States, have been preparing an invasion of the Soviet Union for a long time. American monopolies, industrial magnates, and bankers generously financed Germany's heavy and military industries, effectively arming the country. Britain and France provided cover for aggressive German foreign and domestic policy in Europe. With the hands of German fascism, the Western imperialists wanted to destroy, plunder, and enslave the USSR. Today, the Soviet Union is being portrayed as the instigator of World War II. But where to throw the real story? There is no hiding the Anschluss of Austria, no hiding the Munich Agreement and the strange war when Britain and France abandoned their vassal, Poland, to the mercy of fate. Direct support, as well as an ill-concealed policy of indulgence and connivance, pushed the fascist beast to the east. But the enemy made a mistake in his calculations. Not everything went according to his plan. As a result, the British and American imperialists even had to enter into allied relations with the country of the Soviets. Socialism turned out to be too heads taller and stronger than capitalism. The result of the war was not only a complete and unconditional victory over Nazi Germany and its satellites, not only the defeat of militaristic Japan, but also the appearance of a new bloc of socialist states on the world map. After the war, the Stalinist USSR performed another economic miracle. During the 5-year plan, the national economy, destroyed by the Nazi hordes, was restored. A country that lost tens of millions of people without a Marshall Plan and foreign loans is rising from the ruins. Yesterday's allies in the anti-Hitler coalition very soon declared the USSR their main enemy again. They started making new aggressive plans, but Soviet science, industry, and intelligence proved to be excellent here too. The USSR becomes a nuclear superpower. It has the strongest land army, a powerful navy, and the second, in many respects, the first, economy on the planet. All these factors combined to make the USSR the core of a new civilization. The popularity of communist ideas is growing all over the world. Even in the main imperialist power of the planet, capitalists are forced to fight them. Just 4 years after Stalin's death, the first artificial satellite of the Earth will be launched, and 8 years later, the first Soviet man will fly into space. Was Stalin's contribution to the achievement of the Soviet state great? Definitely. It is only in the fantasies of anti-Stalinists that the country's successes are possible despite their leaders. Was everything that the Soviet people achieved the merit of Stalin alone? The result of his decisions alone? Of course not. In a conversation with the German writer Emil Ludwig, Joseph Vissarionovich talked about how the most important decisions for the state were made. Among the 70 members of the Central Committee of the party were the best industrialists and cooperators, the best suppliers and military, propagandists and agitators, the best specialists in agriculture and national politics. Everyone had the opportunity to correct someone's sole opinion or suggestion. Everyone had the opportunity to contribute their own experience. If this had not happened, if decisions had been made individually, we would have had the most serious mistakes in our work.
The successes of that time were made possible by thousands of qualified specialists and managers. These cadres were trained by the Soviet education system. They were forged in production, in labor, and in service. The road to education was opened for the children of workers and peasants. Not in words, but in deeds, they could now realize their human potential. It is not the property status, not the national origin, not the gender, but the personal abilities and personal work of each citizen that determines his position in society. In a socialist society, all relations between people changed. They became truly brotherly and comradely. There were no masters. There was no lordly oppression or contempt. Everyone knew that they would never be left without a job and a place to live. He knew that if trouble happened, they would provide him with any medical care without demanding payment for it. People's attitude to work changed. What was created by the hands of workers and peasants was no longer used to fuel the luxury lives of the rich. The palace was no longer built for the master, but for pioneers and schoolchildren. The society's resources were spent on education, children's leisure and recreation, on social needs, on health resorts and sanatoriums for workers, and on raising the cultural level of the population. The people saw it, felt it. The socio-economic base laid down at that time also worked at the time when the perestroika workers were already destroying the country with might and mind. Even in the late USSR, it was unthinkable to lose your home because of debts, and the idea of paying for medical services was perceived as savagery and barbarism from another capitalist reality. It is difficult for me to imagine what kind of personal freedom an unemployed person can have who goes hungry and doesn't find the use of his labor. Real freedom exists only where exploitation is eliminated, where there is no oppression of some people by others, where there is no unemployment or beggary, where a person doesn't tremble because tomorrow he may lose his job, home, bread. And no matter how much they lied about the USSR, it was a real social freedom there. There was art, creativity, selflessness, friendship of peoples, and real concern for the man of work. No other country in its history has been able to boast the same rapid pace of economic development, fundamental and applied sciences. Nowhere in the world has there been such a large-scale introduction of scientific achievements into production as in the Soviet Union before 1953. Everything that many people nostalgically recall today when talking about the USSR is incredibly heavenly and not someone's sole merit. The successes and victories of the Soviet state are the ideas of scientific socialism implemented in practice, and Stalin was not just a statesman, but also a Marxist theorist. His early works became a significant contribution to the development of Marxist-Leninist science. Later, he discovered and formulated the basic economic law of modern capitalism, imperialism, and the basic economic law of socialism. Here, Stalin's works. On the basis of Lenin's doctrine of imperialism, Stalin gave an analysis of the struggle between two systems, capitalist and socialist. In 1938, with his participation, a short course on the history of the CPSU was written, an encyclopedia of basic knowledge in the field of Marxism-Leninism, the history of the USSR and the Bolshevik Party. Stalin became the founder of a new science that became an important branch of Marxism, the political economy of socialism, and Joseph Vissarionovich always attached great importance to theory. Our cadres need to know Marxist economic theory well. The first older generation of Bolsheviks was theoretically savvy. We crammed the capital, took notes, argued, checked on each other. That was our strength. It helped us a lot. The second generation is less prepared. People were busy with practical work, construction. Marxism was studied from pamphlets. The third generation is raised on feuilletons and newspaper articles. They don't have deep knowledge. They need to be given food that is digestible. Most of them were educated not on studying the works of Marx and Lenin, but on quotations. If things continue like this, people may degenerate. In America, they say that the dollar decides everything. Why do we need a theory? Why science? And we can talk like that. Why do we need capital when we're building socialism? This threatens degradation. This is death. To avoid this even in the details, it is necessary to raise the level of economic knowledge.
The transition from capitalism to communism is a whole historical epic. Until it is over, the exploiters inevitably have hope for restoration, and this hope turns into attempts at restoration. The overthrown exploiters who did not expect their overthrow, did not believe in it, did not allow the thought of it, with tenfold energy, with frenzied passion, with hatred increased 100-fold, rush into battle for the return of paradise taken away, Lenin. This is exactly what happened in our country. After Stalin's death, counter-revolutionary forces came to power. It was not possible to destroy socialism quickly. This giant locomotive has gained too much speed. It took decades of persistent revision of Marxism, sabotage and wrecking in economics, science, and culture to disorient the Soviet people and prepare them for the restoration of capitalism. History, as you know, does not know the subjunctive mode, and we will not speculate about whether Stalin could have laid straws and prevented the impending catastrophe. Many people now easily judge what happened. Such judges and critics forget that the Soviet state has been constantly threatened with annihilation since its inception. This state was created not in greenhouse conditions, but on the territory of a weakened country in a hostile environment. The Bolsheviks inherited not only the devastation of the two wars, but also the backwardness accumulated since Tsarist times. And most importantly, socialism was being built for the first time in world history. Human civilization had no such experience at all. The USSR still remains the main success of the proletariat in its centuries-old class struggle. That's why, by the way, bourgeois propagandists pour garbage on the Soviet Union, not because of his failures at all, but just the opposite, because too much happened then. It was both a huge success and a painful historical lesson for the working people of the whole world. Any social and political gains can be easily lost if class vigilance weakens. And no one, even the most prominent politician and statesman, alone, will lead the working people to prosperity. This is the business of the entire working class, the business of every class-conscious proletarian. But despite the defeat of the Soviet Union, the victory of capitalism is temporary. The class struggle continues. Socialism is not an invention of philosophers or an abstract book idea. It's an objective, vital necessity for all of humanity and its inevitable future. Lenin's words about the October Revolution can be attributed to the entire Soviet experience.
We have made the start. When, at what date and time, and the proletarians of which nation will complete this process is not important. The important thing is that the ice has been broken. The road is open. The way has been shown. Lenin. 100 years is not a long time for history. Capitalism, by the way, did not win immediately either. The post-Soviet bourgeoisie constantly declares the ineffectiveness of socialism. At the same time, everything that still drives, flies, and shoots in modern Russia is basically the legacy of that backward era. The peaceful atom and the space industry, the remnants of the once great aircraft industry, weapons, and the nuclear shield are all from there. What achievements can Russian capitalists boast of? The jerks of effective managers fleeing with stolen goods abroad? Or the breakthroughs of worn-out pipelines? Or maybe 20 million beggars and the leadership in the number of dollar billionaires? Successful businessmen whose entire success is based on the appropriation of Soviet enterprises? Killed by industry, a ruined village, degradation of all spheres of life, increasingly inaccessible healthcare and paid education, the constant rise in prices, tariffs, and taxes, by raising the retirement age, trillions in offshore accounts. By the way, can anyone tell us which part of our country belongs to our native, domestic bourgeoisie and which part belongs to foreign bourgeoisie? They scare us with victims of repression. At the same time, during the time when Stalin led the country, despite the huge losses in the Great Patriotic War, the population of the USSR increased significantly, and in the era of bourgeois freedom and democracy, the people are dying out. From 1993 to 2006 alone, 11 million more people died in the Russian Federation than were born. There are no calls to repent for these victims of capitalist repression. The indolent intellectuals and human rights defenders at the Wall of Sorrow are not shedding tears. The Yeltsin Center did not open a stand dedicated to the victims of privatization and Gaidar's reforms. TV propagandists day and night talk about the power and greatness of today's Russia, arousing patriotic and even chauvinistic sentiments among viewers. But this virtual reality is increasingly at odds with the truth of life in a poor, dying, and degrading country. We are constantly reminded of the powerful defense of the modern Russian state. Are such miracles possible when science has been crushed? Machine tool manufacturing, electronic, and other important industries have been destroyed. And who are we being protected from if the so-called potential enemy calmly takes what he wants? Russia has long been a place of profit for the imperialists of different countries, and this capitalist
Capitalist International does not care about the well-being of the local population, just as it does not care about the problems of the workers of any other country. It is no wonder that the post-Soviet bourgeoisie constantly tells terrible lies about Stalin's repressions to the robbed people. Somehow, the destruction and looting of the country must be justified. The legend of millions of innocent victims is perfect for this purpose. But it's getting harder and harder to deceive people. Many people already understand that the source of slander against Stalin is Khrushchev's counter-revolutionaries, Trotskyists, Western and post-Soviet domestic bourgeois propaganda. Seeing what is happening now, people are increasingly beginning to look back at Soviet history, looking for answers to the questions of today. Capitalists are not asleep. The machine of disinformation and deception does everything so that no one can calmly and soberly comprehend the historical experience of their country. We are offered to hate the Soviet era and Stalin, or just forget. Stalin is dead. It is dead as a politician, as a state model, and as a slogan. Stalin is the past, not the future. And there is no demand for Stalin in the present. No demand? Is he dead as a politician? This is not an actual past that needs to be put in the closet of history, capital's propagandists tell us. So why is hatred against Stalin constantly fueled? The main reason is the same. Since the writing of the Manifesto of the Communist Party in 1848, the path to the world's first socialist superpower was paved in just 1 century. Thanks to Marxism, the spontaneous and inconsistent struggle of workers for their rights gained a clear goal, became organized, and led to the victory of the socialist revolution and the building of the first proletarian state on the planet. That state proved its ability and strength in the most difficult war with fascist Germany, which was backed by the human and material resources of capitalist Europe. The Soviet Union has become a landmark and a symbol of hope for the working people of the world. The fact that Marxism works has been proven in practice. The vaccine against capitalism has been developed and suffered by mankind. It is deadly for capitalists. And these important pages of history are inextricably linked with the name of Stalin. The greatest successes of Soviet statehood came only during the period when the country was led by Joseph Vissarionovich Stalin. Therefore, all the power of bourgeois propaganda is aimed primarily at denigrating Stalin and discrediting his achievements. This campaign began abroad during his lifetime. It broke out in our country during the Khrushchev years, intensified during Perestroika, and has not decreased its pressure at all today. Anti-Stalinist myths often repeat the texts of Nazi leaflets one by one, and anti-communists are not shy of any absurdity in their lies. Traitors, state criminals, and common criminals are considered victims of the so-called repression. These are fantastic figures when it comes to the number of prisoners and repressed. We won, but not like that. There were successes, but at what cost? It is possible to analyze bourgeois lies about Stalin endlessly, but does it make sense when you understand the reasons why it is being replicated on an industrial scale? The ruling class is afraid of a new organized attempt to build socialism, even decades after the destruction of the USSR that fell as a result of betrayal and counter-revolution. It is afraid because it is through that experience that the proletariat has proven its ability to build a society in which the exploitation of man by man survives, and where there is no place for the masters. For the first time in history, the oppressed class has traded on the sacred cow of private property, presenting a bill to oppressors and parasites of all stripes. Is it a joke? It is not another capitalist who expropriates the means of production and values in his own favor, but a class that must labor meekly for the collective bourgeois. That is why there is a howl about the so-called repression. It has been seen somewhere that workers take power into their own hands and manage their own lives. With similar results, capitalists would have slandered any other leader of the Soviet state in the same way. It's not about a specific person, and the Russian ruling class itself proves this with its information policy. Simultaneously with the line of denigration of Stalin, another line has emerged in recent years. His political figure is sterilized, freed from communist ideology, and then used for the needs of official bourgeois patriotism. Stalin is portrayed as an effective manager who allegedly followed the czars and continued to build a great great empire. The new Russian bourgeoisie privatizes not only the Soviet enterprises, but the successes of that era. This is especially evident in the example of the history of the Great Patriotic War. Even the market rebranding is being carried out, gradually replacing the Soviet symbols with new models. The meaning and class background of those events are actively emasculated. Modern propaganda is trying to convince us that defending our socialist homeland and being cannon fodder for capital in slaughterhouses set up by the bourgeoisie for their own enrichment are the same thing. The image of Stalin as the leader of some abstract classless fatherland is safe and useful for the bourgeoisie. One can even recall his strong hand justifying pressure on his political opponents, allegedly in the interests of national security. But the strong hand of the bourgeoisie is Hitler, Mussolini, and Pinochet, who stifled the labor movements. And Stalin's strong hand protected the workers from parasites. And the military power of the Soviet Union was created not to dominate the world in order to plunder and exploit weak countries, but to protect against aggression from a hostile capitalist environment. Stalin put it best. The task to which I dedicate my life is to elevate another class, namely the working class. This task is not to strengthen any national state, but to strengthen a socialist and therefore an international state. Moreover, every strengthening of this state contributes to the strengthening of the entire international working class. If every step in my work wasn't aimed at strengthening and improving the position of the working class, then I would consider my life aimless.
From the point of view of bourgeois law, Lenin, Stalin, and other Bolsheviks will always be criminals, just like Spartacus was a criminal for the slave owners who violated the law of the Roman Empire. The criminal was Stepan Razin according to feudal laws. Laws are written by the ruling class, but the truth is that the capitalist system itself is criminal and anti-human. When one class owns practically all the means of production and the other owns nothing but its own labor force, the relationship between them is that of the exploiter and the exploited. Capitalism condemns hundreds of millions of people to work for pennies, poverty, unemployment, starvation, and death in wars waged in the interests of moneybags, and it itself creates the conditions in which the oppressed are forced to fight for their rights. You can demonize Lenin and Stalin as much as you want, but no one did more for the revolution than the czars, landlords, and capitalists. The modern bourgeoisie is doing the same thing, making the lives of working people all over the world a living hell. History is created primarily by classes, not individuals, even the most prominent ones. The Stalin we know was not formed from scratch. It developed in the revolutionary movement, the Bolshevik Party, which fought for the interests of the working class and all honest workers. Bourgeois propagandists can continue to portray Stalin as a mythical villain or a lone hero, incite hatred towards him, or passive faith in a fabulous savior. Despite these decorations, people will still discover the real Stalin. Stalin the revolutionary, Marxist theorist, and leader of the world's first socialist state. A man who from a young age to the last days of his life was faithful to the communist idea. His name still arouses hatred from capitalists of different countries because for them there is nothing scarier or more dangerous than the steely will of the proletariat, aware of its class interests and armed with the theory of class struggle. Stalin is a harbinger of their imminent and final defeat. And the Stalinist USSR is the harbinger of a new world where the oppression of humanity will be ended forever.